For most people, receiving a handwritten letter or package in the post is exciting. It usually means a pleasant correspondence or present from a friend or relative. But imagine opening a parcel and instead of a nice gift, it contains a severed human body part, or getting a letter that is so grotesque in its detail that it's hard to unsee. Well, here we look at 5 occasions when people received in the post some of the most shocking and repulsive things ever. Hit those lights and enjoy. J. Paul Getty III. In 1957, John Paul Getty was named by Forbes as the richest living American, with an estimated fortune of $1.2 billion. However, despite his wealth, he was notoriously thrifty, and this was reinforced in 1973 when he refused to pay the demand for his kidnapped grandson, John Paul Getty III. A film was made about this in 2017 called All the Money in the World. The 16-year-old was living in Rome when on July 10, 1973 he disappeared. 2 days later, his mother received a ransom note asking for around $17 million. The only person capable of coming up with that sort of money was the child's grandfather. However, when she asked him to pay the ransom, he refused. It's fair to say that at the time, the police and even some members of the Getty family expressed doubt that the boy really had been abducted. But even after the kidnappers sent his mother the following letter, the ransom still remained unpaid. Dear Mummy, since Monday, I have fallen into the hands of kidnappers. Don't let me be killed. At the time, Getty Sr. is reported to have said, I have 14 other grandchildren. If I pay 1 penny, I'll end up with 14 kidnapped grandchildren. Months passed with still no sign of the kidnapped boy, until a newspaper in Rome received a gruesome package. In it was the severed ear of Getty III, along with a lock of his hair. Pictures also emerged of the boy with his ear missing. Eventually, his grandfather agreed to pay the captors at a reduced rate of $3 million. After 5 months, his grandson was released and left at an abandoned gas station. But the damage had been done, and Getty III spiraled into a life of addiction, which eventually cost him his life when he died in 2011 at the age of 54. Donald Harvey. Donald Harvey was a hospital orderly during the 1970s who worked in Ohio and Kentucky, who systematically murdered his patients undetected over a period of 17 years. When he was eventually caught, he claimed to have killed over 87 people, although the official estimate is nearer 57. Harvey claimed the murders were intentionally mercy killings to alleviate suffering. However, he became obsessed with killing, and in the end enjoyed it. Cyanide and arsenic were his favourite methods, which he administered via food, injection, or IV, although he also used suffocation, insulin, or other poisons, as well as insertion of a coat hanger into a catheter, causing an abdominal puncture and subsequent death. When Harvey was arrested, he pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty, and instead was given 28 life sentences, which he served in Ohio. While incarcerated, Harvey wrote several letters, some containing many pages in his scrawling handwriting. But perhaps one of his creepiest messages was included in a letter he sent in 1998 to one of the many people who wrote to him in prison. This is what he said: Lord, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change the things I can, and the wisdom to hide the bodies of those people I had to kill because they pissed me off. Imagine receiving that in the post from a mass murderer. In another macabre twist, since Harvey's death in 2017, some of his letters have been put up for sale online and fetch anything up to $100. Dennis Rader. Dennis Lynn Rader is an American serial killer who between 1974 and 1991 killed at least 10 people in their homes in Kansas. During his murderous reign, Rader regularly taunted the authorities with letters describing details of his murders. One of his most unsettling letters was the one he sent in 1979 to Anna Williams, a woman he had stalked with the intention of killing her. When he did finally break into her home, laying in wait for her, she didn't come home and went dancing with friends instead, so he gave up. 2 months later, she received this creepy poem in the post. "Oh Anna, why didn't you appear? Drop of fear, fresh spring rain would roll down from your nakedness to scent the lofty fever that burns within." But in 1991, the letters and the murders stopped. However, in 2004, out of the blue, Rader resumed his letter writing and sent media outlets and authorities several letters stuffed with items related to his crimes, including photos, a word puzzle, and suggestions for the BTK story. He also left packages with clues, including a computer disk. These items ultimately led to his arrest, and in 2005, he pleaded guilty to all 10 counts of murder. He is currently serving 10 consecutive life sentences at El Dorado Correctional Facility in Kansas. But if he hadn't started writing the letters again, there is a chance that he would still be a free man. Albert Fish. Hamilton Howard Albert Fish was an American serial killer, paedophile, and cannibal in the 1920s. To those who knew him, he looked like a sweet old grandfather, and they thought nothing of letting him babysit or spend time with their children. But in reality, he was killing and raping children before eating them. In May 1928, Fish answered an advert placed by 18-year-old Edward Budd. Fish visited him at his home on the pretense of offering him a job. He introduced himself as Frank Howard, a farmer from New York, and promised to hire Edward and his friend Willie, who he said he would send for in a few days. Chillingly, he later confessed that he planned to tie Edward up, mutilate him, and leave him to bleed to death. However, he failed to show up and sent a telegraph instead, arranging a different date. This time, he did turn up, and on this occasion, he met Edward's 10-year-old sister Grace. As soon as he set eyes on her, he apparently changed his intended victim from Edward Budd to Grace Budd. He quickly made up a story about having to attend his niece's birthday party and asked Grace's parents if he could take her along. They agreed, and Fish picked her up that evening. She of course never returned. Initially, a local man was arrested and charged with her abduction, but was found not guilty at trial. But on November 1934, an anonymous letter was sent to the girl's parents. As Grace's mother was illiterate and could not read the letter herself, she asked her son to read it for her. It describes in detail how Albert Fish killed, cooked, and ate Grace. The horrific contents I'm not going to read, but one particular chilling line reads the following: "I choked her to death, then cut her in small pieces so I could take my meat to my rooms." The letter, and others Fish wrote, reveal how truly evil he was, and for the parents of Grace, who had waited in hope for 6 long years, to finally find out the fate of their daughter in such a way must have been devastating. Ultimately, the letter led the police to Fish, and he was arrested. He later confessed to 3 murders and 2 stabbings, although it's believed he was responsible for many more, later claiming that he had taken the lives of over 100 children. He was put on trial for the kidnapping and murder of Grace Budd, and was convicted and executed by electric chair in New York in 1936. Luka Magnotta. On May 29, 2012, the Conservative Party in Ottawa received a blood-stained, foul-smelling package. Inside was a severed human foot. Later in the day, a janitor at an apartment building found a torso in a suitcase left out for trash. A few days later, on June 5th, a parcel containing a severed right foot was delivered to St. George's School in Vancouver. On the same day, a similar package was delivered to False Creek Elementary School that contained a right hand. It was later confirmed that both packages were sent from Montreal. Another parcel containing a left hand was intercepted in a Canada Post processing facility addressed to the Liberal Party. The gruesome discoveries were part of a chain of events that started on May 24, 2012, when Chinese international student Lin Jun entered an apartment building in Montreal belonging to Luka Magnotta. 2 days later, a bizarre video appeared online, depicting a man being stabbed and dismembered. The perpetrator can be seen using a knife and fork to cut off some of the flesh and gets a dog to chew on the body. The 11-minute video is titled One Lunatic and One Ice Pick and was uploaded to bestscore.com. The US and Canadian police were alerted to the video, but they dismissed it as fake. Just a couple of days later, body parts started appearing around the same time Lynn was reported missing by friends. Montreal police identified the torso as belonging to Lynn, a 33-year-old Chinese computer science student at Concordia University, and a warrant was issued for the arrest of their prime suspect, Luca, who was finally arrested in Berlin. On July the 1st, a tip-off led police to Montreal Park, where they discovered Lynn's skull. At his trial, Luca was found guilty of 5 charges against him, and sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years. So that's 5 of some of the worst letters and parcels ever received. Since this video contains deaths and murders, give some thought to the victims and their families. Having a loved one murdered would be hard enough, without having to deal with something like this, as was the case for the majority of these topics. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next video.